I was expected to support my brother and his 5 children. The truth I uncovered led my grandparents. My family expected me to bail out my brother's chaos. As far back as I can remember, I knew I wasn't the golden child in my family. That title belonged to my older brother, Jake. Growing up in our small Ohio town, Jake was the charming troublemaker, always the life of the party, always forgiven no matter how many messes he left behind. Me, I was the quiet one, the one who studied late into the night, worked summers at the local hardware store, and clawed my way through college with scholarships and a part-time gig at a diner. My parents never seemed to notice my efforts. "You're fine, Matt," they'd say dismissively. "You've always got it together." Jake, though, he could crash a car, flunk out of community college, or rack up credit card debt, and Mom and Dad would swoop in with excuses and cash. "He's just finding his way," they'd insist. I learned early on to rely on myself. After college, I landed a solid job as a project manager in Columbus, built a decent savings account, and bought a modest house, nothing flashy, just stable. Meanwhile, Jake's life was a roller coaster of bad decisions. He married his high school girlfriend, Sarah, right after she got pregnant, but that fell apart when he cheated. Then came wife number 2, Lisa, and 3 more kids. That marriage tanked when Lisa caught him blowing their rent money on sports betting. By the time I hit 30, Jake was on wife number 3, Kelly, with a grand total of 5 kids, ages 14 to 4, living in a cramped rental outside Dayton. My parents were Jake's personal cleanup crew, paying his overdue bills, buying groceries for the kids, even co-signing loans he'd never repay. I stayed out of it, focusing on my own life. But last fall, something shifted. Mom started calling me more often, gushing about my promotion at work. Dad invited me to Sunday dinners at their house, something they hadn't done since I moved out. "We're so proud of you, Matt," they'd say, and I let myself believe it. After years of feeling invisible, I wanted to think they finally saw me. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was a chilly October night, the leaves crunching under my boots as I walked up to their porch. We ate pot roast, talked about my latest project at work, and for once, I felt like part of the family. But after dessert, the mood shifted. Mom cleared her throat and said, "Matt, we need to talk about Jake." They launched into a sob story, how tough it was for him to raise 5 kids with Kelly barely working, how they'd stretched themselves thin helping him. Then Dad dropped the bomb. "You've done so well for yourself, son. You don't have kids, no mortgage issues. You're in a position to help." Their plan floored me. They wanted me to buy Jake a 4-bedroom house in a better school district. His current place was too small for 7 people. They expected me to set up savings accounts for all 5 kids' future expenses, since you got through college fine, and they deserve a shot too. And they suggested a monthly stipend of $3,000 for Jake and Kelly's bills, plus a chunk of cash to fund Kelly's dream of opening an Etsy store selling custom candles. The total upfront cost? Around $1.5 million plus ongoing support. They framed it like I'd be the family hero, stepping up to save Jake from his hardships. I sat there, stunned, my coffee going cold. This wasn't a favor, it was a lifetime commitment to bankroll my brother's chaos. When I said I couldn't take that on, that I'd help with emergencies but not become his financial crutch, the room exploded. Mom sobbed, calling me heartless. Dad slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "You're selfish, Matt. We raised you better than this." They accused me of abandoning Jake's kids, of turning my back on family. Dinner ended with them storming upstairs, leaving me alone at the table. I thought that'd be it, but within hours, Jake texted me, "You're seriously gonna let my kids suffer? Some brother you are." Then his oldest, 14-year-old Tyler, messaged me, "Uncle Matt, why don't you care about us?" It was a gut punch. I blocked their numbers, reeling from how fast things had spiraled. The next morning, my maternal grandma called. Apparently, Mom and Dad had bragged to the whole family that I, the successful son, was going to fix Jake's life. Before they even asked me, they told everyone he was getting a new house, that I'd cover everything. Now that I'd said no, they were humiliated, and Grandma was furious. She and Grandpa had always assumed Jake's support came from his odd jobs and my parents' savings. Not that they'd been secretly funneling family money to him. When I told her the full story, she said, "This isn't right, Matt. We need to talk to your cousins about this." The family starts to crack. After that call from Grandma, things got messy fast. She and Grandpa didn't just sit on what I told them, they dug deeper. A few days later, they called me back, their voices tight with anger. Turns out, they'd been sending my parents money for years, thinking it was for both me and Jake. Stuff like college funds, car repairs, basics to help us get started. Over a decade, they'd handed over close to $150,000. I never saw a dime of it. I'd scraped by with loans and late-night shifts at the diner while Jake's life, his weddings, his rent, his gambling debts, had been quietly bankrolled by my grandparents' generosity. Grandma was livid. "We trusted them, Matt," she said. "They told us you didn't need much because you were so independent." Independent? Sure, because I had no choice. Meanwhile, Jake had coasted through every screw-up with a safety net I didn't even know existed. Grandpa chimed in, "We're fixing this. They're not getting another cent until we know where every dollar went. They set up a family Zoom call that weekend, me, my aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole crew. I braced myself, expecting awkward small talk, but Grandma and Grandpa went straight for the jugular. They laid it all out. How they'd been misled, how my parents had funneled their money to Jake while I fended for myself. They even showed a spreadsheet, years of checks cashed, labeled for the kids. That never reached me. The call was silent for a good 10 seconds before my Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, broke it. I had no idea, Matt. They told me you didn't want help. Then the floodgates opened. My cousin Luke admitted Mom had hit him up for $2,000 when Jake's second marriage imploded, claiming it was for the family. Aunt Deb said she'd sent $500 when I started college, thinking it went to me. Dad had told her I was all set. It was like peeling back layers of a lie I'd lived under my whole life. My parents had painted me as the self-sufficient one to everyone, downplaying my struggles while they propped Jake up. Jake didn't join the call. Big surprise, but Mom and Dad were there, red-faced and defensive. We did what we thought was best, Mom snapped. Jake needed more help. Matt was fine. Dad doubled down. You're all blowing this out of proportion. We're a family, we help each other. But the room wasn't buying it. Grandma cut them off. You lied to us. That stops now. She announced they were rewriting their will. Mom and Dad were out. The inheritance would go to me, my cousins, and Jake's kids, but locked in trusts managed by a lawyer, not my parents. After the call, my phone lit up. Cousins I hadn't talked to in years texted me. Dude, I didn't know it was like that. Aunt Karen called, crying, saying she'd always thought I was just too proud to ask for help. It was overwhelming, nice but weird. I'd fought so hard to stand on my own, and now people were seeing me for it. But Jake, he wasn't done. He emailed me the next day, a rambling mess of nostalgia and guilt trips. Remember when we built that treehouse? I always looked up to you, Matt. I just need a little help now. My kids are struggling. He attached a photo of his youngest, Mia, holding a broken toy. Subtle. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad went into overdrive. Voicemails piled up. Angry ones calling me a traitor. Teary ones begging me to fix this family. They even tried the grandparent card. You're stressing your grandma out, Matt. Think about her health. But Grandma called me right after, laughing. Don't you dare fall for that nonsense. We're fine, better than fine. They're just mad they're caught. The extended family started picking sides. Some rallied around me, others stayed loyal to my parents, but most just seemed shocked. Then Jake's first ex-wife, Sarah, texted me out of the blue. Heard about the drama, she wrote. Not surprised. Your parents pushed us into that marriage. Said they'd cover everything if I stuck it out. Guess where that money came from? Another piece clicked into place. My grandparents' cash hadn't just bailed Jake out. It had shaped his whole life, while I was left in the dark. The truth spills over. The fallout from that Zoom call didn't just ripple. It crashed like a tidal wave. My parents doubled down, refusing to admit they'd done anything wrong. A couple days later, I got a long email from them, CC'd to half the family. It was a masterpiece of self-justification. They claimed they'd invested in Jake because he was building a family, while I was focused on myself. They listed every penny they'd spent on me. School supplies, a used bike when I was 12, even gas money for my first job, totaling maybe $5,000 over my whole childhood. Then came Jake's column. Rent payments, car loans, emotional support during his divorces. They didn't put a number on it, but we all knew it was way more than $5,000. The kicker? They said asking me to help Jake was balancing the scales. Since I'd had it easy with my fancy job, I stared at my laptop, jaw on the floor. Fancy job? I'd worked 60-hour weeks to get where I was. Balancing the scales? They'd tipped them so far in Jake's favor I'd never even had a chance to catch up. The email ended with a guilt bomb. Matt, family shares the wealth. Don't turn your back on us now. They thought this would win people over, but it backfired hard. My cousin Luke forwarded it to me with a single line. Are they serious? Aunt Deb called, fuming. They're acting like feeding you as a kid was a favor. I'm done with their crap. Grandma and Grandpa weren't playing around either. They'd already sicked their lawyer on my parents, demanding a full breakdown of that $150,000 they'd sent over the years. A stern letter arrived at Mom and Dad's house, giving them 30 days to account for every cent or face legal action. I didn't want it to come to that. Suing your own parents feels like a Lifetime movie gone wrong. But Grandma was adamant. They stole from you, Matt. From all of us. This isn't just about money. It's about trust. Then Jake's second ex-wife, Lisa, reached out. We'd barely spoken since their divorce, but she'd heard the family gossip through her kids. Your parents bankrolled him the whole time we were married, she told me over the phone. I thought he was working overtime to pay the bills. Turns out it was your grandparents' cash. They even paid for his lawyer when I left him. She paused, then added, I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't know they were screwing you over too. It was another gut punch. My parents hadn't just favored Jake. They'd orchestrated his life, using money meant for me to keep his chaos afloat. Jake kept emailing, his tone shifting from sappy to desperate. "I'm drowning, bro," he wrote. "Kelly's candle business tanked before it started. And the kids need new clothes for school. You're my only shot." He sent a blurry photo of his middle kid, Ethan, sitting on a busted couch. I felt a twinge of pity. Those kids didn't ask for this, but I wasn't about to let Jake drag me under too. I didn't reply. The family group chat turned into a war zone. Some relatives defended my parents, saying I was too hard on them, but most were Team Matt. Aunt Karen posted screenshots of old texts where Mom bragged about Jake's resilience, while brushing off my college graduation as no big deal. My cousin Sophie chimed in. "They told me not to send you a grad gift because you didn't like attention." BS. It was surreal seeing years of quiet resentment bubble up. People who'd never said a word were suddenly spilling everything. Then came the curveball. Grandpa called me late one night, voice low. "Matt, we found something. Your dad's been cashing checks in my name. Forged signatures. We're talking another $50,000 over the last 5 years." My stomach dropped. Forgery? This wasn't just favoritism anymore, it was criminal. "We're meeting with the lawyer tomorrow," he said. "You in?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'm in." The reckoning. The next morning, I drove to my grandparents' house in their quiet suburb outside Cincinnati, my hands sweaty on the steering wheel. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Torres, was already there, spreading documents across the dining room table. Grandpa handed me a stack of canceled checks, his signature scrawled in Dad's shaky handwriting. "We found these in an old safe deposit box," he said. "Your dad's been siphoning money since Jake's first kid was born." Grandma's eyes were red but steely. "We gave them everything, Matt, and they took more." Ms. Torres laid out the plan. They could press charges for forgery and fraud, enough to put Dad behind bars and freeze whatever assets Mom and Dad had left. "Or," she said, "we settle it quietly. They pay back what they can and we cut ties. Your call." I didn't want my parents in jail. Despite everything, that felt too heavy, but I was done letting them skate. "Make them pay," I said. "But no cops. Not yet." That afternoon, Grandma called one last family meeting. Everyone on Zoom again, plus Mom, Dad, and Jake in person at their house. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Ms. Torres took the lead, holding up the forged checks for the camera. "We've got proof of $50,000 stolen over 5 years, on top of the $150,000 misused before that. This ends now." Mom gasped, clutching Dad's arm. Dad's face went white, then red. "You're bluffing," he sputtered. "That's family money. We had every right." Grandpa cut in, voice like thunder. "You had no right to lie, forge my name, or leave Matt with nothing while Jake got it all. You're out of the will, and you're out of this house." He dropped the bomb. They were selling the vacation home Mom and Dad had lived in rent-free for 15 years. A cozy lakefront place worth $500,000. The proceeds would fund trusts for me, my cousins, and Jake's kids, managed by Ms. Torres. No family hands would touch it. "You've got 45 days to move," Grandma added. "Pack light." Mom burst into tears, wailing about losing everything, while Dad yelled, "You're tearing this family apart, Matt. This is on you." Jake, slouched in the background, finally spoke up. "You're really gonna let my kids suffer over this?" I snapped. "Your kids aren't my job, Jake. You and them made this mess, not me." The room went dead quiet. Even my parents stopped shouting. Then the family chimed in. Aunt Karen, "You two owe Matt an apology, not a guilt trip." Cousin Luke, "I'm done pretending this is normal." Even Jake's oldest, Tyler, who'd snuck onto the call via his mom's account, typed in the chat, "I'm sorry, Uncle Matt. Mom made me text you that stuff." My throat tightened. Those kids were caught in the crossfire and I hated that, but I wasn't caving. Ms. Torres laid out the deal. Mom and Dad had to repay $75,000 of the provable theft. Half up front, half over time, or face court. They'd lose the house either way. "Sign now or we file tomorrow," she said, sliding papers across the table. Dad's hands shook as he grabbed the pen, muttering, "You'll regret this." Mom signed in silence, tears streaking her face. Jake just stared at the floor. 2 weeks later, the house was on the market, and my parents moved into a cramped apartment in Dayton. They sent me one last email, a blurry photo of me and Jake as kids, fishing at the lake, with the caption, "We're still your family, Matt." I deleted it. Jake surprised me, though. He texted a week after the meeting. "Enrolled in a welding program. Kelly's getting a job at Target. We're trying." I replied, "Good luck," and left it at that. His kids reached out too, through Sarah, asking if I'd visit sometime. "No pressure," she added. "They just miss you." I said I'd think about it, maybe down the road when the dust settled. The money from the house sale came through last month. My share went into savings. The kids' trusts are locked until they're 18. Grandma and Grandpa set up a scholarship fund too. $10,000 a year for any family member chasing a degree or trade. No strings attached. They hugged me after the final papers were signed. "You stood up, Matt," Grandpa said. "That's more than we ever did." It's been a wild ride. Anger, betrayal, relief all mashed together. My parents still play the victim to anyone who'll listen, but the family's done buying it. I'm not the invisible kid anymore. I'm the one who broke the cycle. And for the first time, I'm living for me, not them. That's worth more than any lake house.